keep this also very interactive. I'll give like 5 minutes for each of our distinguished panelists to share what they're doing and what their understanding is about this next important topic, which is nature-based solutions. As you know, the climate crisis is real, and the only things that can help us are plants that solve our biological crisis. They can actually draw down carbon from the atmosphere and produce oxygen, which is what we need, both terrestrial ecosystems as well as marine. So we'll have a little discussion on this because it's a vital topic. As we speak, there are fire burnings in many countries around the world, and they will continue to burn. As I mentioned earlier today, there's an El Nino effect, which will trigger droughts in Australia, lots of rain in the United States, and decrease of the Indian monsoon, and that has global ramifications. So having said that, we'll go dive into the topic right away and allow each of our panelists to share what they're doing in the nature-based solution world, and then we'll have a more open dialogue with what some of our participants want to contribute. So we keep it interactive between stage and the floor, and we'll finish straight before we invite Tom to tell us more about what B Corps is all about and how we measure impact. So, first with John. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Graham, and thank you for taking the time to come today. So my background is multivaried. So I've been in law, I've been in insurance, I've been in shipping, and environmental and healthcare. So that's over far too many years. I first got involved in the environmental world going back some 20 years, where I built an environmental company around the world. So we had around 700 people, but it was built on ESG principles. And it was before really it was recognized quite how valuable and important this area is. It was difficult to get initial funding for it, but we were able to grow quite substantially. So during the different careers, and I've been doing a lot of healthcare work for governments and for individual companies as well. I bumped into Brian at a conference where we both got very bored, actually. So we went out to have a cup of coffee, and somehow we got together again and said, right, we're going to do something important together. So I'm rebuilding, in fact, the passion that I have, which is for environmental change, community change, which includes healthcare. So with the experience that I've had, I've recognized that I need to build it with teams of people who are better than I am in key areas. That's fundamental. You never have people who are similar to you. You've got to get that variety. So Bram and I are in the process, outside of his other careers of implementation of climate change activities, to build that sort of company again, which hopefully actually I'll also try and do with a fund in 2024, which is an impact fund. I know you've heard a lot about impacts, but I believe that the only way we're going to get money into this industry is to give returns on the investment to the big shareholders. So I'm not dealing at the moment with what I call smaller projects and smaller companies, but I'm delivering quite key industry changes, both in Europe and in the Gulf, and that covers changes of refinery use, infrastructural energy, and what I call big ticket areas, but ones that desperately need on-the-ground capability to deliver sustainable change. They're just not words, but they're things that are actually needed hugely at the current time. So I'm concentrating on those, but then hoping to build into the smaller companies, the smaller numbers of individuals who can both engage with what we're going to be doing, but also participate in it as well. So not just as a bystander, but as what we can do today, all together, and then in the bigger companies. So it's a journey that I'll do for, I hope, some years, making that change, and as I said, building it with Bram and a whole range of other people as well. And hopefully, maybe even in the future, I'll come across many of you as well, that we can work together. So that's me.
Thank you. Over to you, Rajman.
Hi, I'm Raj. Not Yodali, as you probably gathered. Yadali and I know each other for, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 years. She was on one of my committees and she's stuck in Paris, so I am a hologram. We actually discussed whether actually there was a business for creating holograms for events like this. So if anyone's been to Abu Voyage and you know, basically doing something like that, and then, I don't know, the problem would be then accidentally sitting on the wrong chair, and then that'd be a disaster. Anyway, so, I mean, Yadali's business, I'll talk briefly about, and then I'll talk about mine, because we're both female tech entrepreneurs. Her business is Eco to Wallet, so it's pay, planet, and play. So the pay is every time you use your Visa card, it's actually contributing towards a piece of land that she's got in the Amazon and building a rainforest. And the more sort of eco kind of purchases you make, then effectively there is a gaming element to it, a Tamagotchi, where that can grow on your app. So that's her business, Eco to Wallet. She's got a license to operate in Sweden. She is fundraising. So of course, if there's any impact investors here, that'd be great. I started working in innovation about 2019. Smart local energy systems. My company's called Bank Energy. The last speaker spoke about, I've written it in a quote, hold on. Why, hang on, no. Any system not in balance takes a lot of energy going, and we're in a crisis. So whilst you spoke about that on the metaphysical level, in actual electrons and flows, you know, only 40% of our energy bill is actually energy. The rest of it is in the transmission and the system generation. And indeed, basically, we're dealing with two dynamic systems, that of supply and of demand. And basically, the balancing of the grid is one of the greatest issues. Flexibility is a really, you know, rising area. So Bank Energy is about getting as many assets into our trading platform as possible. I also wanted to actually mention, you really touched me with the crisis, because I had a crisis last year as well. Basically, we had about 340k of innovation funding, and basically we built this trading platform, and we built the car, but I didn't have the keys to the engine. And my partner, I spent about 50 grand chasing them. So it was literally do or die for me. So I had to have that profound change, and God, I'm really tearful. And I can't, my life has changed so much having that profound change, and actually having spirituality as the basis of any ongoing business. So now, I mean, if I want, you know, I'll go for my, you know, my chakras when I go running. I will pray and meditate. I will focus on what I need to do for society, keep that as a high level. What was said earlier as well, in that time, we've actually won a project in Ghana. It's $500,000. We're putting in some mini grids and solar e-cooking. Literally just came this morning from writing an application about the next Energy Catalyst Round 10. It was all about what are your impacts. I was looking at the sustainability development goals and going, yeah, we're going to do education, gender, climate change, And in September, I've been told I'm going to get another 600k to build out Bank Energy. So I'm like, the universe has given me a second chance. And this time I'm going to do it right. So I've actually engaged a mentor who's told me, right, you've got to start the new co, you've got to get your founders, your team, I want you to do a 3-minute pitch, you've got to get that sorted out by next Tuesday. So yeah. So sorry, I kind of went off tangent there, but there was so much in the previous thoughts that really touched me. Thank you.
Great. Imran, why don't you tell us?
Thank you. I'm Imran Chowdhury from Links Our Founders Network. We're a global network of startups, basically giving free support to startups and all over the world. We see a lot of different kind of green tech and new startups who are coming in this space, ESG. Mainly because of regulatory reasons, which is very interesting because, as you know, that the regulatory framework and the landscape is changing quite a lot. So this is something very new to us, and we would very much like to see more founders coming into this space, and they are coming, by the way. And the investment is also coming, which is very, very good for this space. So this is something which we think can have quite a lot of potential. Because some are for-profit organizations and startups, some are non-profit organizations and startups. So this whole landscape, in my opinion, will change dramatically in the next 12 to 24 months.
Great, thank you. So now I'm gonna dive in straight into questions, since this topic is about nature-based solutions and how we humans need to heal our damaged ecosystems before they go into total collapse to a point of no return. How many of you have heard about the tipping point, where once we breach the 450 parts per million, then this feedback loops start happening all over the planet. All the glaciers will melt even more. The oceans will be warmed a lot more than what's happening in the Pacific Ocean with El Nino. All our coral reefs will start bleaching and collapsing, like what's happening in the Great Barrier Reef. 70% of the oxygen that we breathe comes from marine ecosystems, which include corals, plankton, seaweed, mangroves, and seagrass. And if those ecosystems collapse, all terrestrial land will also collapse. So the ocean has a major role to play in the life support system of all beings on the planet. And the way we're contaminating our oceans, especially in international waters, and dumping is like the greatest crime on the planet. So having said that, John, because you've been working in this carbon world for a while, I know there's a price that companies are paying because of regulation, again, being put in many developed countries. But that price of carbon is minuscule to the amount of environmental or ecological damage to soil and water and air that corporations have contributed over the past 50 years. If you actually calculate all that debt, that ecological debt, they'll go bankrupt. All companies would. So, there's a new methodology of ranking companies now with B Corp. So like the whole business cycle of the company is to do good, but also to do business in a clean, sustainable way. Not just about carbon, but also how they treat their staff, how they treat the immediate environment, ecosystem, and what they do to regenerate or restore whatever they have contributed in damaging over their business cycle. So what's your take on that, and where do you think these kind of nature-based solutions that everybody's talking about, even at the European Union level and so on, and water rights, land rights, forests, ecosystem, where do you think this kind of valuation will go, and what are the feeders you see in the industry?
Thanks, Romeo. With that single question, I could be here all day, I think. So I started to look at this from an holistic approach. Being in business, being in industry, being in the sustainability industry for a long time. So I'm just going to briefly touch on a few areas where there's been major and continuing, if I could say, damage to the environment, where we can make a big change. And things like no-tilling agriculture. So I'm looking at agriculture and I'm looking at aquaculture. They each produce food security, and between food and health, i.e. health and well-being, are the fundamentals for populations, whether that's individuals or communities. So I've been looking at this from an approach of what are the major industries that can be changed and are willing to change and have a reason to change. Because a lot of the old industries, as we heard earlier in one of the presentations, are dead and gone. They didn't change, they didn't adapt, and they didn't look at what's coming down the road. If you look at AI and you look at chatbots and you look at all of these, there are hugely good things that come from all of this, but they have to be in a regulated manner. Most industries and businesses are very bad at being regulated. They don't like it. So I still believe in regulation. I don't believe, though, that you should choke innovation and choke businesses and industries. They've all got to make money if they're going to have employment. So there's a balance to be made here. But we can innovate with big bodies that represent large communities. I'm talking about communities of business people. So just looking at one industry, I don't know how many of you eat salmon, for example. I should think nearly everybody eats salmon. It's one of the most dreadful industries around. I mean, you've only got to go to the fish farms to see how bad they are. Bad for the fish, bad for the production, loss. You've got huge contamination of a lot of Scotland, which is one of the major areas. And actually the people that I'm working with have come out of fish farming in the environmental, in the coastal areas because of the environmental damage. So we're looking at new areas of what I call sustainable fish production. And those are actually produced in clean environments, no preservatives, no chemicals, nothing, with an environmental net zero target. So that's one area where I think suddenly you can change an industry, and it's you, it's me, who is changing that. Because none of us want to see damaged fish. You don't want to see the videos that I've been having to watch and go to the farms that I don't really want to visit. No-till agriculture has been around now for probably the best part of 10 years, 15 years. And there are practitioners in the UK, and it's gaining momentum as to why it is better not to till. It's not just for the carbon, but it's good for the soil. We've depleted our soil to almost an end result. That's very dangerous. It doesn't do anything for food security. And it's for these reasons that the governments are actually interested now in supporting people who innovate. So they are supporting no-till. They are supporting new types of farming, aquaculture and other areas. But I think one of the areas that certainly Bren introduced me to some years ago, which is one that I am also passionate about and will get involved in, is mangrove swamps. For all the reasons of what does that build in the aquaculture market around the world? Hugely, it builds old communities into new communities, new food sources, increased or against tsunamis, against actually large volumes of climate change on these islands. And it can also produce trading, produce CERs, trading credits, carbon credits. We've got to find ways of getting money back into this ecosystem to drive change. And anything of that nature, to me, is worthwhile doing. So I do see there's a big future for everybody here, but also around the world. We can change aquaculture, we can change agriculture, we can change them at the base level. You and I can both do that. But we can also buy goods that are actually sustainably produced. There is no reason why we should buy the stuff that comes out of the supermarkets, which is actually in the main pretty dreadful, processed, and it's not well produced, whatever they may say. So my message would be, get involved in an area where you can have individual impact, or get involved with a body, an entity that collects other entities, in which you can have a direct payment. I think your idea is absolutely great for the tree and the credit card. But that idea is absolutely wonderful because it gets us all to participate in this. And that's what I would hope that I can be part of in building new companies.
Great, thank you so much, John. Now, Raj, we know this big hoo-ha about ESG and triple bottom line, total accounting for big corporations that just want to tick the box and comply with these regulations, you know. But those guys have massive budgets. Of course, they have to adhere to these laws, but they also have to comply with a lot of shareholder regulations and so on and so forth, depending on the jurisdictions you work, whether it's accounting for the total carbon in scope 1, scope 2, or scope 3, which is big when it comes to scope 3 because it looks at the entire ecosystem of where you buy your products from the entire planet and where you sell them. Fine. Now, the question is for individuals who really want to make a difference and actually calculate their own footprint on a daily basis and invest in something that they care about, not only for themselves, but maybe for their kids, their grandkids, and so on, from their wallets, from their actual wallets, the power of your wallet. I mean, I asked Greta, you have all these hundreds of thousands of kids in the streets chanting against Parliament, but how many trees have you asked them to plant? She said, not much. So I said, imagine if all your 100,000 members, or maybe millions around the world, as a protest to their governments, each of them goes and plant a tree or 10 trees every year as a direct protest because governments are not doing enough. That would send a clear message because it's for their future. And they could measure that using technology. That's exactly what EcoWallet could do for young people who want to stay engaged, who want to see where their investments are growing, in real time and engage themselves through every credit card purchase of how much emissions, every burger you eat, every coffee you drink, every clothes, every purchase you make, personal carbon accounting, which they can then go do something about it. So what's your take on that? What's happening? Who are the players out there, and how difficult and challenging it is to change mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of almost answered the question itself. So, using Eco2 Wallet is giving you that transparency, because it's about it's about understanding the data throughout the supply chain, and that's the purpose of the company. You can use this Visa debit card to make purchases, and at the same time, you know that you are paying towards planting a tree in the Amazon forest, and there's a lot of work that goes behind that to make all that logistics happen in that transparent manner. So it's not greenwash, it's not just ticking the box, as you say, for CSR. So it's got that feel good factor as well, and then you can choose your own avatar or Tamaguchi, and and it's also got the potential to expand into a much broader supply chain of I know that purchase has come from a sustainable source, so if I buy that particular good using my green card, I'll call it a green card, then it's almost double points. So I think you have to ask the youth of the country, but I think once that message starts to come out a bit clearer, you'll soon find all the big banks trying to do something about it as well. And I think.
Great. Now, Imran, you create platforms to create an enabling environment for investors to come in this green tech space. It's huge. But where do you see the trends going? I mean, there are a lot of bright ideas and young people, but how much scale needs to be achieved to really see the impact of it? I'm not talking about unicorn companies that make $1 billion in shareholder value and so on, but how do you select a groom or a hand-holding protocol that you will follow with this amazing bright ideas that you see growth that can really impact on the ground, and measure that according to your KPIs, whether you're putting the sustainable development goals as a benchmark or the climate goals? How do you do that? Or what are the challenges you see, and what kind of solutions your team might be able to offer these green tech young people and entrepreneurs in the startup world?
It's not easy to start with. We ourselves, we are a network, so we are in a very good position in that way that we can actually see the whole ecosystem. We can see the startups, SMEs, and we can see commercial organizations and investment side as well, VCs. So we can actually gauge what's happening in that landscape. One thing I would actually say is that, which is very interesting for me personally, is that before it was only ESG or any other word you want to use with it. Now it's plus something. So ESG plus tech, ESG plus whatever. I think, and that is something which I think startups and SMEs are doing to attract investment. And most of the investors are actually also looking into this. Another one interesting angle is the blockchain. I'm seeing a lot of ESG startups, especially for-profit startups, which are using blockchain technology as well. I don't know much about blockchain technology or NFTs or things like that, but I see that it's working, at least attracting the investment side of it. Now, going forward, where it will go, very, very hard. I wish I could, I know, but I think that regulation would come and play a big part in this. Wherever the regulation would go, I think the startups and the investors will follow. But again, as I said before, the best part is that the investment is there. I mean, now, if you go like 5-10 years ago, they were like, VCs who only doing X or Y or maybe different things. Now we have VCs, we only do green tech. We're only in ESG space. They are not the number is quite low, but still there are some who are actually focused in that particular area. And I think that is something which is, in my opinion, changing the landscape from the investment side. Startups, we have to categorize them, startups, SMEs, you have to categorize them in two different parts: for-profit, non-profit. Now, non-profit are very, very different. They have very, very passionate. I mean, both passionate, but they know that they're doing it not for profit. They might have commercial organizations. We actually do have one in our network. They're called RAIN. They're UK based. They're very active in Latin America in the forestry side. But the for-profit one are very different. For-profit are the one which are really green tech in that sense. They are actually including technology and trying to do different things and offer different solutions to different stakeholders. The future part is something which is, in my opinion, a little bit of like a gray area. Not that gray, but I would still say it's very early to see. Of course, the impacts are always positive. It's the pace that would be that I don't know, or would be very hard to gauge, in my opinion.
Great. Do you want to add on?
We're all talking about personal responsibility here, and it's great. And I think the platforms for commitment to an individual change, to planting trees are great. But change comes through power. Change comes through impact from a large number of people. So how can collectively that power be generated into the sustainability area? Industry gets investment. Most of the green investors are nothing to do with green investment. They may invest in a company, but they're actually for profit, and they need to be a high return to be comparable with what are generating from green companies. And that's one of the biggest problems. So green startups, green technologies rarely have a return of an interest, a return of capital, to be able to generate the interest from venture capitalists or otherwise. It's changing. But we need to change how business looks at its own footprint. Now, we can do that collectively. It could be by direct action. I'm not a great supporter of direct action. I understand it, but I think it actually puts people's backs up. And I think we could move within business and industry to target those polluting ones, the ones that are not telling the truth to everybody, by not investing in it, by actually our pensions, forcing our pensions to actually go greener than they are, and in reality, a real green investment policy. And the same for all forms of businesses. And we can do that. We can ensure that the governance is right, that the accounts and reports actually do report on what the values are and what their critical pathways are to deliver sustainability. So I believe in the power in the future of all of us together changing those investment priorities, changing our pension funds, and directly doing it with them. And enough of us move from a supermarket. You've only got to look at what has happened with Sainsbury's in terms of salmon. Nobody bought any salmon. That's the power of group power that we should be using. Again, I don't agree with a lot of the actions that are taken, but I understand the motives behind it, and we've got to do it faster. And we can do it. We have the power to make that change quickly. And it's all about customer doing so. And I want to see the values that we are all espousing here coming generally within the business. And the UK press is good at it. It's not so good in the other countries, but it's very good here. And we can do a lot more by all of us supporting larger groups, larger collectives of individuals who want to make that change. So I see it happening very quickly over the coming years. I think it will rapidly increase because businesses that are not sustainable will not get investment. The city is changing. So is Paris, so is Frankfurt. Singapore has changed already. It's the two big countries that we've got to worry about, which are China and Russia. And China, actually, and India as well. Those do not make any changes, unfortunately, quickly. But we can do it, and we can make that change. So I'd like to see a lot more collective action than just, and personal. I think it's important, but I want to see collective change.
Thank you very much, John. That's all we have for this panel, and we are about collective innovation to fight climate change. So it's right bang on target with our mission. Having said that, thank you so much to our panelists. Give them a round of applause.